Hello everybody and welcome to Nathan on Shuffle and to my latest Top 5 episode. I've got an interesting one here for you guys today that hopefully you'll enjoy. A little bit of different feel to it, I felt like, based on the topic. Basically, this is the show where my wife gives me some topic in progressive rock and I come up with a top 5 off the top of my head, without much research, without looking into things too much, without copious note-taking or anything like that. This is just what came to mind, and I just talk about it and try to make a short little show about it and use it as a jumping off point for you guys to give your thoughts in the comments. So, as always, I like to urge people to subscribe at the beginning of these videos. I really appreciate that. It really helps my channel for people to subscribe. I'm really thankful for all of my current subscribers. And please leave a like on the video. That would really helps me as well to know that you guys are liking the content I'm putting out there, and it gives me confidence and helps me moving forward with the kind of videos that I put out. So thank you guys for your support, and let's get into today's topic. So today's topic that Jana assigned me is top 5 artists in your fantasy prog band. So this is kind of fun because it allows me to assemble a band, so I have to basically think about the different instrumentalists that I want and how they slot into these sections, and creating somewhat of a super group in prog music. So the direction I sort of took this in, I thought it would be more fun to focus mostly on classic prog, the 70s style prog music that I love, with the band members that really speak to me from that era. I thought that would be a fun approach, because when we're talking about more modern prog bands and forming a fantasy band, it kind of exists for me in terms of Transatlantic. That would be largely the fantasy band that I would come up with on my own anyways. So, but there's a lot of fun possibilities for some of these classic prog artists, thinking of how they could have combined in these different iterations, And some of these members have passed on, unfortunately, but in fact, many of them have, the majority of my top 5. But I think it's still fun to imagine what could have been if all these prog bands decided to formulate different, iterations with different members. So first I'm going to start with keyboards. Who do I get on the keyboards here in my fantasy prog band? So number 1, I'm going to get Keith Emerson to be the keyboardist here. I think he's just such an all-star, stellar keyboardist, pianist, he's classically trained. He has so much excitement in his playing. You can't deny some of these pieces where he's just, I know he did a lot of antics on stage. He would be quite a showman, so it'd be fun to see him in a live performance. But he's just so talented and did so much in the genre in those early years. And so I'd want him on board in my little fantasy prog band, I think. On bass, there's really only one name that comes to mind for me when it comes to classic bass players, and that's Chris Squire. So on bass, I'm going to have Chris Squire there, just the bedrock, the foundation of the band. And like I've said in many videos, Chris Squire to me is one of the most interesting bassists of all time, because he treats it like it's a main instrument of the band and has such interesting bass lines that really are very prominent, that are very memorable, and that jump out when you listen to their music, when you listen to Yes's music. Me and Jana oftentimes have listened to Yes songs together, and she points out the bass parts. That's the part that she gravitates towards and that kind of grounds her in the song. And I think it's largely due to Chris Squire and how he plays. And so I definitely want him to be part of this fantasy prog supergroup here. On drums, I feel like I have to add Neil Peart on drums from Rush, of course. Just the master, the professor, he's just such an incredible performer and player. He just is flawless, It doesn't get much better than him when it comes to drum playing. He inspired so many drummers moving forward, and he just was such a talent and really knew how to, once again, kind of like Chris Squire, treat the drums as a singular instrument. It's not just the backbeat to all the other music. It's its own instrument that has its own unique character that he brings to it. So definitely want to have Neil Peart as part of this group, because he was just one of the more fun drummers to watch play because of his style. So, and then we got to get a guitarist here. On guitar, I'm going to go, I'm not sure this is the conventional, well, it's probably one of the conventional options, but the one I wanted to pick was Steve Hackett from Genesis. I got to have a member of Genesis on the team here, and I think Steve Hackett is a great choice because he just has such a great expressive way of playing the guitar that he's a bit underrated, in my opinion, in terms of these big guitar heroes from back in the 70s. He just has such a great feel for the instrument, brings in so much emotion in his playing, and really brought up these pieces by Genesis to an incredible level. You know, he brought a lot of heart to the band, in my opinion, and I think you could really tell that once he was out of the group, that there was a piece of them missing once he left that led them down a road towards a different style of music completely. You know, I think he really brought about a lot of that progressive spirit that the band had in that, especially the mid-70s Trick of the Tail, When and Wuthering period, where his sound really helped carry them forward post Peter Gabriel to remain still grounded in progressive rock feel. And so I really love his guitar playing, his expressive nature, and I like how he continues forward today, still playing Genesis classics, still being a big part of the prog community, and he's just such a great, warm personality and a great person. So gotta have him on the list here on my guitar. I almost went with like David Gilmour. I thought would be a fun choice from Pink Floyd, amazing guitar player, but I thought Steve Hackett was a fun choice. And now we have to have a front man or front woman, perhaps, you know, someone to front the band, to sing, to add their voice to this mix. And I'm going to go with Annie Haslam from Renaissance. I just love her voice. It just kind of makes me melt. You know, I just really appreciate her style. She's a brilliant technical singer, you know. She has this amazing range, and she really elevated all the pieces she sang on in those classic Renaissance days. And I just think it would be fascinating to hear female vocals on top of these other musicians who aren't in female-fronted bands, to hear what that would sound like. You know, of course, you know, John Anderson is a person that came to mind almost immediately because he's so talented and would make for a great singer in this group. But I was trying to pick one person from each group, and once I locked in on Chris Squire, felt like I couldn't also pick John Anderson, so I was trying to really spread things out. I almost thought about putting in Ian Anderson from Jethro Tull. I thought that would be a fun frontman for this project, because then you add in that flute playing also to the mix, so it adds an extra element in that regard, and he's just a fun, kind of crazy wild man who would be entertaining to watch as well. But I settled on Annie Haslam just for the vocal quality, just to add a female to this mix. I think that adds some good variety, and I just really respect her and think she deserves more acclaim, so why not put her in the mix with these incredible prog musicians? So that's the top 5 for me. The Keith Emerson on keyboards, Chris Squire on the bass, Neil Peart on drums, Steve Hackett on guitar, and Annie Haslam fronting the band as the lead singer. I think that would create for an interesting combination, and who knows what could have happened if that super group formed, you know. And there's so many great iterations. I'd be fascinated to hear you guys talk about your combinations in a fantasy prog band. I did this, and I may have even came up with the same exact list when me and Jana did a 1-year anniversary of the channel show, I believe. We took some fan questions, and I think that was one of them. What would be your fantasy prog band? And so maybe it's a little bit of a copycat of that, but I'm sure many of you didn't see that. And so hopefully you enjoyed this episode and this top 5. A little bit of a different format perhaps, but it's a lot of fun. So thank you guys for joining me, and hopefully you guys are out there enjoying the music. Thank you guys, and I'll hopefully catch you in another top 5. Bye.